the incomparable Chrystal Kornegay, Executive Director of MassHousing, former CHAPA President, past DHCD Undersecretary. Notice I put CHAPA President before the Undersecretary, and so many other leadership titles. Chrystal is a truly remarkable leader who fosters an environment for others to join her in leadership. Chrystal will present our Emerging Leaders Award.
Good evening, everyone. We are having the best time over here at MassHousing at the watch party. Yay! I'm going to take this opportunity to talk a lot about the work that Francis and Monique have done in their efforts to create an environment in Massachusetts that they can stay and thrive, and what that means for them both in terms of creating equitable housing opportunities. I do want to give shout outs to thank you, Governor Dukakis, for the work that you've done, but big shout outs to Governor Baker, both for the leadership that they've done. You see our girl Rachel back here. For the leadership that you've allowed us both, all of us, to do in terms of housing and making that something that happens across, something that happens deeply, but particularly around acknowledging the racial homeownership gap, and not just what that means in terms of public policy, but what that means in terms of the commonwealth that we want to build. I want to just think a little bit about what it means to have leadership and access. And this is a thing that I may have known, but I definitely learned from Governor Baker. And so when Governor Baker and I discovered each other, I was in Jackson Square in Columbus. I was in Jackson Square in the neighborhoods working, and then candidate Baker really wanted to know about what it meant to do community development, to think about affordable housing, and and he talked to everybody. Somebody sent him to me. And like I usually tell people, like, we met and we fell in love. And so I had no thoughts about public service, but he asked me to join the team, and I said yes, and had learned a lot, and actually, discovered the idea of what it meant to have access, right? And so it made me feel like, okay, well, now I'm in a place where I've got to open that and grant access to others to make sure that we continue to have smart, thoughtful, young people who are, really being, pushing us and pushing the agenda and really fighting for the commonwealth that we know we can be. So I'm gonna go through this really quickly. There's, as the governor described, there's a lot of housing development stuff, a lot of, federal government restrictions that happened previously. And these are all slides that Francis and Monique prepared. So I'm just using, I get to use the stuff they've done, the research, they put it together, made it look pretty. I just get to stand up here and look pretty and talk. So next slide, please. And so this is just an example of a map around redlining. You can see that we're thinking about the arrow points to Nubian Square in Boston around 1937. Next slide, please. And then if you think about what the legacy of that is, you can see what's in Nubian Square in that census tract today versus someplace that wasn't redlined, and what that means and what the future of that is, right? And so all the policies that we're thinking about today, we're really trying not just to undo what was done, but also to move forward and create the kind of commonwealth we want to see. Next slide, please. You can see there was a lot of talk around that, and the real issue is, not the real issue, one big issue is around the homeownership gap between Black and white families is larger today than it was when the Fair Housing Act was approved in 1968. I just want to take a minute. It's larger today than it was back then. Next slide, please. And in fact, we live in a Commonwealth in which in 2019, there were no home purchase loans to Black and Hispanic home buyers in 66 of the state's 351 cities and towns. And there were no home purchase loans to Black home buyers in 130 municipalities. Gonna take another minute and think about what that means. Next slide, please. And the racial homeownership gap in Massachusetts is 7th highest in the nation. Next slide, please. And when people think about the Commonwealth Builder Program, and a lot of reasons that we focus on gateway cities and Boston is because in 2019, almost 50% of Black and Hispanic borrowers purchased in those communities. That's why we focus there, because that's where people live, that's where they want to buy, and that's where we should be making investments, where people are. Meet people where they're at. Next slide, please. And the ARPA program is designed to think about both sides of this equation, right? It's the buyer side. And so how do we equip people who want to buy homes in the marketplace, right? It's like there are homes for sale. We know about the barriers to first-time home buyer have to do with down payment assistance, credit, access to credit, and those kinds of things. And so when the governor put the proposal together, it was about the buyer side stuff, right? And so the governor's proposal, it was about $300 million to deal with buyer side stuff. And we think the legislature's $100 million is a nice down payment. It's a good starting place, but we've got more to do. Next slide, please. We also have the Commonwealth Builder Program, as the governor talked about before, and he, very clear that $60 million, we could buy some things, we could start, which we needed to do. And as the governor alluded to, what we realized when we went to do the program was there was no pipeline because no one was thinking about building home ownership opportunities in those communities. So there was no pipeline. And we had to take time to build that. Well, guess what? It's like, money's on the street. People joke, I show up in their community is because I got a checkbook. And so we start walking around town. We got some walking around money. Again, $100 million from the legislature. It's a nice down payment. It's a nice start, but it's not going to get the job done. And we've got enough money to do that. And so we all need to be out advocating for that in order to make these historic investments in these communities. Next slide, please. This is an example of a deal that we did in Haverhill. This was a project in which the governor announced what the ARPA was. And the reason I'm kind of ending here is because I want Francis and Monique to know that when Rosa talks about she no longer has to worry about rent increases, offering her kids more stability, your work led to that. It isn't just what you're doing here, it's that. That's what you're doing. That's what you're making. And so next slide, please. Join me in congratulating and thanking Francis and Monique for their efforts to make the Commonwealth's affordable housing ecosystem more just. Okay, so Francis, you're going first.
Thank you, Chrystal. It's very surreal to be here for many reasons. I never thought that I would be, doing this virtually. I never thought that I'd have the governor call Monique and I by name. I never thought that I would have such an amazing mentor and coworker and boss as Chrystal. And I am just so honored to be here and share this with some people that have borne me so much for the last few years. Housing is something that is very near and dear to my heart. I grew up in Quito, Ecuador. I grew up seeing housing inequality every single day of my life. I grew up with seeing folks that had to be out on the streets or out in the mountain slopes because there was no affordable housing. I studied architecture to get to that, to understand a little bit more of that. But then I came here and was privileged enough to be able to study in the US. And I learned more about planning and the structural issues behind it. And with that knowledge, I was lucky in that I was able to go across the globe, right? And work in Jordan with Syrian refugees, and work in Colombia with Larry Vail, with refugees of the war there. And never did I think that I would be in the US and be here and see, oh my, there are so many issues here too. And as an immigrant to this country, and you know, from somebody from the South, there are so many North and South issues, but you still see this place as a place of opportunity and dreams and goals, and it is. But it was really the non-formal education of learning about the systemic issues that got me interested in working in this in a way I never thought I would. And it is an absolute privilege to have worked for the past couple of years to really look at the racial homeownership gap, really get to the numbers, see that when nobody else was really speaking about it. I mean, it was really, and it was my first day here. Monique took me aside and she's like, this is what we're doing. And we have to present.
They started a week apart. So it's like,
I was like, wait, what? And we had this amazing group with CHAPA and MHP and MACDC and so many other important folks, basically all the acronyms of housing, DHCD, and we got to look at the data, to look at policies that were being done across the country, and really think of not just the beauty of not just the research, but solutions, right? What could we actually do? And so through our work, we've been able to then inform the Commonwealth Builder Program, which is so exciting. And we really hope that it does expand with the ARPA funds, working on my mass mortgage website, working on really ingraining racial equity in every area of our work within the agency in a way that wasn't, I don't think, here before fearless leader Chrystal came. And it's been such a privilege. And honestly, I mean, I think in the past year, everybody's really realized the value of a home that is safe, that is affordable, that is healthy. And now more than ever before, we really need folks in the Commonwealth are essential workers that come in many different ways. You know, folks that are undocumented and working in the grocery store or working in construction. Folks building the homes need to have a safe and affordable home. And it is such a privilege to be doing this work and to continue doing this work and make sure that folks across the Commonwealth have a home that is safe, affordable, and adequate, regardless of race, ethnicity, income. And I'm so appreciative and so grateful for my wonderful team and for my family and for my amazing mentors at MIT, at UMass Amherst, that I've built around the world, really. And thank you again for being an emerging leader.
Monique?
All right, so I am deeply honored to receive this award. When I came to Boston 5 years ago, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. From a girl, like growing up in the Bronx, you know, New York City is a city of haves and have-nots. So I've seen racial inequities, I've lived racial inequities. I feel like I was an advocate from the start, just always saying like something is not fair and I wanted more for myself. And, you know, it's led me to this path to Boston. I really didn't even, I'm still trying to wrap my head how I got here, but I'm so happy that I am here. Thank you so much to Chrystal Kornegay for creating the policy innovation role and, you know, providing me and Francis the space to learn, to grow, and to become emerging leaders. Like, we would not have been able to do this without your leadership. For some of you on this call have worked for Chrystal or worked closely to Chrystal, and, you know, it's always a fun ride. You know, every call from Chrystal is, you know, a great call. But we love to do it because this work is so important, and, you know, it's again, it is so important. So thank you to Francis for building this plane while we fly it. We received this role. There was nothing like it within the agency. And from the first day, it was like, you know, this, and this, and this. And we're like, okay. And we had many meetings to like figure out what is policy innovation? What does it mean? What is our methodology? How do we communicate with other folks in the team? We've done this work around racial equity and homeownership, but we've worked so much with our multifamily division, so much with our planning and program division, our marketing division, all of these different types of spaces in mass housing. And I will say working for mass housing is really a true pleasure because you can call anybody and they're always ready to help you. We always start with questions, sometimes too many questions, and they'll help you. You know, our watch party here, you know, that they hear, you know, 8 p.m. here in 1 Beacon Street. And they're definitely, you know, so crucial to us becoming the leaders that you all think we are and, you know, awarding us. Thank you so much to my friends, my professors, mentors, colleagues, all, and my classmates here in Boston, across the country and abroad. You all bring me laughs, joy, and keep me grounded. You know, I love a group text. I love text messages. I love all of that. And just, you know, communicating with you all, you know, whether or not we're having social debates, political debates, or just laughing about something on reality TV. It's like, you know, I love Housewives. Like that's, you know, dealing with affordable housing and, you know, all the heaviness that comes with it. Sometimes you just need, you know, that escape, and my friends and colleagues and everybody around us provide this really great community. Thank you to my partner for listening and, you know, sharing my excitement and all of this, even though he may have been acting some of those days, but he definitely listens to me. Thank you to my family for always being the loudest part of my cheerleading section. Thank you to my mother, who doesn't always understand what I do, but she is, you know, she calls me the CEO. My mother and my grandmother call me the CEO because they just know I'm important. So that's what they say. So I share this award really with my mother. I love you so much, Mommy. And thank you to CHAPA for this recognition. I hope I can, you know, live up to this, you know, this recognition of being an emerging leader. And I hope to one day, you know, become as high as, you know, my fellow awardee, Amy Shetman, and so many other. Also, again, thank you so much to Chrystal. This is my work auntie. And all that we're able to accomplish. I look forward to continue doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you, CHAPA.
Thank you. You all are amazing.